Why do some leaders struggle when they get more responsibility and others are able to thrive? That's precisely what we're going to be unpacking in today's video. So if you want to learn more about this and you want to use it in your life as a leader, you may want to consider saving this video so that you can come back to it later. Here are the specific things that we're going to be covering today. 1. What really is the problem? Why do leaders feel overwhelmed when responsibility increases? 2. What is the real insight over here? What's really happening? And 3. What's the solution for this? How can this be overcome in a long-term way? So let's start this off. First, let's paint the picture. Leaders are coming up all across the professional landscape almost every day. One leader takes up a position of leading a 20-member team and 6 months later is really thriving, is able to handle the pressure, is getting good results from that team, and is able to maintain balance for himself. Another leader in the same position, after 6 months, is really struggling. His balance is disturbed. He is beginning to feel overwhelmed and stressed by the additional responsibility, and that might even be showing up in his personal life. He might be carrying work-related stress back home with him as well. So here's the thing. It's not really the responsibility, or rather the increasing responsibility, that is creating that overwhelm for you as a leader. What's really happening over here is that the internal architecture for being able to take on more responsibility has not been upgraded to match the additional responsibility. So the truth, it's not responsibility that is causing the overwhelm in you as a leader. What's really happening is that it's just exposing the current internal architecture. Let's look at the real solution then in this case. Let's understand the mechanics over here. So let's talk about that particular leader that was beginning to feel burnt out, stressed after 6 months of taking up that leadership role. In his or her case, what's really happening is that the internal architecture of being able to handle more roles or a more demanding role was beginning to show up as not being fully upgraded to manage that kind of a demanding situation. So what that means is the response to handling more people, the response to dealing with additional targets, the response to having more responsibility for the organization as a whole was beginning to take a toll. Now, really what's happening in the background is this, that because the mechanics of not knowing specifically how to deal with that additional responsibility internally was not fully upgraded. Whenever the challenge is showing up, it's not first that the person is beginning to lose energy, or the person or the leader is incapable or doesn't have skills. What's really happening is that particular overwhelm is beginning to impact perspective. So in a deeper way, what internal architecture really means is recognizing the role of a strain internally, which is beginning to shift your perspective in life. So What really is the solution then in this case? As a leader, recognize one thing, that you are not, it's not that you are not a responsible person. It's not that you are not an ambitious person. It's not that you don't want responsibility. It's not that you don't have capability. It's simply the fact that the internal mechanisms of how to deal with more demanding situations requires a little bit of polishing. And there's no judgment involved over here. It's actually not at all your fault that you might even be experiencing this overwhelm. Because think of it this way. The most expensive gadget on planet Earth, even that comes with an operating manual. Now, in your case, you're a high-performing individual and you were never ever really given an operating manual of how to use this complex machine. So if you are struggling in any way in taking on these new roles, remember that it's not your fault. That's the first thing. Second, there's absolutely no harm in upgrading your internal architecture. And this is the specific thing or the specific term that we use in the Bulletproofing Happiness Framework. So now let's understand how really this can be solved using the Bulletproofing Happiness Framework. Now, in my work with leaders and CXOs across the globe, in order to help them to upgrade this internal architecture, here's what we use. The term for this particular technique is called owning your own internal space. Now, what that means is you slowly begin to recognize how to use the tools and mechanisms and how to upgrade your thought process, your mindset and your beliefs so that there is not much blame happening regarding things outside yourself that are impacting you. You are beginning to slowly understand how to own your own internal space, your own internal experience. So how does this work? In this framework, you understand to recognize, number one, when the blame on an external event is beginning to take place. Second, you begin to recognize that it's not really that event that is making you feel that overwhelm. You start learning how to examine your response to those challenging events, to uncertainties, to higher demands, to complex situations, to challenging people who you have to work with, whatever be it. Then, once you have recognized this, you learn how to shift and recognize the impact that your internal processing is having on your perspective. Remember, we spoke about this. When stress hits, it's not really the loss of capability that happens first or happens at all. It's simply a loss of perspective. The same thing begins to look much bigger, and that's when you end up feeling stressed about it, anxious about it. If this is making sense to you, I invite you to either comment and share your thoughts, or even send us a private message and me and my team will respond to you. Now, if this resonated, I have a small exercise for you to try in the next week. As a leader, if you want to not feel that overwhelm with these massive duties that you have, for the next 1 week, just simply try and recognize when are you outside of owning your own internal space? Or when are you actually thinking and blaming your responsibilities or other people or lack of control of external things as the reason for your overwhelm and struggle? Just note those points down. That's the greatest first starting point. As we conclude, I want to invite you to access a proprietary professional grade tool that me and my team have developed after years, specifically right now, almost 12 years of working with leaders and highly ambitious people to help them upgrade their internal architecture and be more resilient in life. What this particular professional grade tool is called the Stress Resilience Audit, and it will specifically help you to identify what is the hidden leak that stress is having on your life right now and where exactly it's impacting you without currently being fully visible. Head to the link in the description to access this professional grade audit, which is completely complimentary. We will interact soon. Until then, take care.